successful building is one where every user makes their own relationship with the buildings. It's democratic. It's not a hierarchical building in terms of where you enter, where you leave. You can find your own paths in it. And I believe, like a city, a building that can allow people to carve their own paths is one that you, I think, develop more intimate relationships with. I'm Rahul Mehrotra. I'm a founder principal of the firm called RMA Architects. We are based in Mumbai and also work out of Boston, where I teach at Harvard University at the Graduate School of Design. And Ahmedabad has been a very special place for me because I've studied here at CEPT University and was delighted when we were asked to build on the campus for Ahmedabad University. Ahmedabad University is an initiative that has taken great traction in the last 4 or 5 years. And they developed a master plan in Navrangpura in Ahmedabad. It's a wonderful plan because it articulates a campus. It articulates a sense of relationships between different buildings and faculties. And then the School of Arts and Sciences was one of the anchor programs that they wanted to establish very soon, and we were fortunate to be asked to design this. There are very strict guidelines and footprints, so the overall volume and massing of the building gets contained. How within that you can creatively respond to a very particular program, and I think that was really the challenge of this project. How one understands what the client is very critical. A client can be broken down into 3 components. One I call a patron client, someone who has a vision to do something. Then you have what is an operational client, right? The operational client is the people who make something happen. So it could be the campus engineer, the campus architect. And then the third component of the client is the user, which is the faculty and the students. And the architect's job is to understand all those aspirations and bring them on the same page, so to speak. This Ahmedabad University campus used to be, while I was a student in Ahmedabad, actually a cricket ground. So it was a very large swath of land.
This is very interesting. When I first came 4 years back, I came with my father and we were coming to see the university. The entire thing was just sand, basically. There were not trees, nothing, no building at all. And it's amazing to see that temporal perspective, right? Over a period of time, brick by brick, it's been, or concrete in this case, has been put up together. And by the end of my first year, we had an entire building. And at that point of time, I completely forgot how it used to look before the building was there.
So the campus is sort of more or less rectangular in shape, and the entrance is on the east. On the north and the east are 2 major thoroughfares and roads. CEPT University is on the western side. What the planners did was very interesting. They created a yard right in the center of the campus. And then the other faculties like, the engineering and the arts and sciences, which we were asked to design, were much more central to the campus. The general density in terms of height at least is about 4 floors. And so therefore the height stipulated by the master planners for this was also 4 floors. A historic building on the east by Atmaram Gajjar was deemed to be preserved. And within the arts and science, the first decision we made, because you had the woods on the north and a wonderful grove of trees on the south of the site we were allocated, is except for the staircases and the elevators, we left the rest of the ground floor completely free. So it created a porosity for people to walk through. Then to carve into that ground floor spaces where people could congregate spontaneously to interact from different schools. So people from the arts would meet people in the sciences, from someone from the engineering, and maybe even from the adjoining campuses. The spectrum goes all the way from the arts to the sciences, which have requirements for laboratories and completely different sort of spatial requirements and even technical requirements. And therefore, how do you in a building integrate such a broad spectrum? Our imagination of the building landed on the idea that let's think of this as an armature, a framework which is created out of components that might form the commons, right? We need an elevator, a staircase, an elevator, so we know that this becomes a framework that can establish that. We need, at a certain distance, another set of services. So that kind of gave us these sorts of divisions, which then allowed for optimum use, so that everything within it could be flexible for us to add and subtract as we went along or as the client went along. You see surfaces which make this armature, and you see the infills, and they are expressed in different materials. So the infills are all the wooden louvers and glass and creepers or open terraces, and the armatures are these solid surfaces within which are the toilets, the staircases, and the elevators. And that became really the expression of the building. The challenge really for the design was the ground floor. The most important function in some ways, which neutralizes disciplinary boundaries, is the library. And so we imagined the library as a vertical component starting on the ground floor. So you could enter the library on the ground floor, and you could enter the building just through the library. So it became one more way to enter the building, but also as a unifier of the different disciplines. The ground is this blue which strikes you. It's a drum. It has its own sectional logic and goes up 2 floors, but it's like a building within the building. In the ground floor, we wanted to kind of dissolve that circulation spine completely. And that's the reason why we began to curve some of the buildings. We began to break away from the geometries. We began to have columns that were asymmetrical. And we wanted to kind of soften the structure or even dissolve it to the point you almost felt the building was floating. You have otlas along the structural columns, which are like platforms for people to sit on. Right across from it, you have a sunken pit which can accommodate about 15 or 20 people and some platforms. And in the center, what we did was made a large staircase, which, say, for an outsider, they would see that stair and know at least there's a signal of where you can enter if you don't know the building. It does 2 or 3 things. One is it narrows as you get to the top and begins to frame the green that you see behind. You're drawn to nature as you go up. But then along the way, there are smaller articulations. The railing is being carved in a way that you can put your hand, and it engages your hand and it gives you the support to climb these stairs. Also, the first stair has been floated away from the ground, so it lightens the stair. The second flight of the stairs is built in steel, so it gets even lighter. That's the dean's office that overlooks it. So the dean, in a sense, can almost see who's coming in and out. It doesn't get cut off, but it's animated through visual contact with people. You don't know quite what is behind these openings. There's a kind of enigma. At the same time, you're focused on climbing up because of the green you see. The idea was to create intrigue, but yet create a kind of welcoming feeling.
So I think, being an introvert, one of my favorite spaces are the little corners present in the staircase. So you can sit there and maybe just have some time with yourself, or maybe with a friend, and complete some assignment or the other.
And next to it is a large amphitheater where 50 people can gather to watch a film. It's adjacent to the main grand stair and the entrance. So it's also on the route to something else. So someone could actually go through here and then take the staircase up, or vice versa. So this is the amphitheater. In a sense, again, it's one of those spaces that were carved out from what was the circulation. And here the material was changed to this flame finish red granite just to make a difference, to make it a little more precious than the kota. There can be a whole spectrum of uses for this space, right? There can be a formal usage where a professor might hold a class here. There might be informal uses where I come here with my friends, as you see with these students, and they're surfing on the internet or checking email or just chatting and catching up. There can be more spontaneous uses that somebody wants to recite poetry here or do a dance performance, they could do it and people might gather. Someone might have a protest meeting here. And because it's also in adjacency to the library, people might pick a book from the library and come here and look at it or read it. We articulated it with some formality so that it complements these two adjacencies. Then you have a space which is an information center, again with many sort of seating areas. A classroom which is meant as a campus classroom, which means anyone from the campus can book it. And then again, the repetition of the otlas and the sitting pits, etc. The classroom can take 100 people, the library can take 60 people, one amphitheater can take 50 or 60 people, the otlas can take 5-6 people. So through that variation in scale also you get intimacy, or you can choose the level of intimacy that you want. Even on the orthogonal surfaces, we did large cutouts, so you begin to get a layering of space and you begin to change the scale of the space and the kind of light that's formulated there. So someone who traverses the different floors vertically would be completely surprised because the sectional logic is also changing in the same way as the plan is changing. Where the central grand stair is, it's double and triple heights, so you experience volume. In other places, it's much more squeezed. I think we've been very cognizant of, one, the existing trees on the campus, and we've made a big effort to frame them.
You'll see that, trees sort of come through certain gaps. You just have to walk down and you'll see on the left side this entire space where you are just looking at these green trees and the branches. You are in a darker space, but then that space is lit. It almost looks like a theater screen. So it's very interesting that way.
And we have used the green not only as a visual delight, but also as a way that would offer shade. Let's say you go to the first floor, you've come in through the grand stair, and here the corridor becomes more discernible just because of the density of requirements here, from administrative offices for the deans to laboratories to classrooms to bigger classrooms, etc. We proposed a large faculty lounge, and within the faculty lounge there are services, but it also has many different formats. It's got one large space which can accommodate about 30 or 40 people, and the other half is more a kind of traditional lounge with more comfortable furniture, more individual seating, where a faculty with a laptop can catch up on their email over a cup of coffee.
My favorite space in this building is the faculty lounge. The reason why, because firstly it is dedicated to only one section of the users of this building. If you want to disconnect yourself from your work even for half an hour, grab a cup of coffee, just kind of think about how you would like to plan your day or a particular activity, or you just don't do anything, just scroll on your phone, and that's the place for me to be.
So as you then go to the second floor, it gets much calmer, it gets much less dense. You begin to have double height spaces that overlook platforms, you have terraces that classrooms can spill out to. At the bookends, you have the faculty offices, which in section are half levels. In the bulk of the building, you needed a certain clearance of more than 3.5 meters, but the faculty areas could be rationalized at 8 or 9 feet. So you have one flight of stairs that takes you to almost what feels like a mezzanine. So which means in effect you get many more floors for the faculty offices, the density increases. And what you see at the far end with the Louvres is a zone which is a common zone for the faculty to meet if they needed to come out of their offices for a meeting. It also creates a threshold. where students realize that they're moving into a different kind of zone, in this case, the zone of the faculty offices. So perhaps there could be reverence, but at least there'll be hesitation, which is nice that they are reminded and they are mindful that's a different part of the building.
I was very fortunate to have an office in this building. I really enjoy walking through the space more than like standing, because as I walk through the space, the frames keep shifting and I really enjoy the way they shift along. So this morning when I was walking up to my office, the frame I could see was this square frame within that tiny little square, and through that you see students using a lounge space sort of right in front of the blinds that opens up into the greenery.
Because of the increase of density at the two ends on the east and west, it allows us to carve out spaces within the bulk of the building because we are not losing area. And that becomes new staircases that connect double heights, that allow people to look down from the upper floors to the lower floors, so the monotony of the corridors, etc., get broken.
So I am an quite extroverted person. So when I walk around at the university, especially while going from floor to floor, there are a lot of different connections. So you don't have to necessarily go from the front or the back. There's also a connection that's there within each floor to quickly go like to the faculty's office, or even just sitting with the PhD students, because a lot of us interact with them. So I think it's very unique how there are different access points within the same building. So you can be moving to the same part of the building through different ways, and that leads to you meeting new people. So it's not that difficult to run into someone that you haven't met or someone that you want to meet.
So, talking about social spaces, these mid landings of the staircase, we actually made as little rooms where people could sit. So, you have wood in this railing, so it's soft. The landing just expands, and we've created a niche on either side with seats where students can wait for someone, to come and meet them. And it becomes a place people could even sit and work on their sort of laptops. So these are kind of punctuations which make social spaces for unintended or accidental interactions, as I'm seeing with my friend here.
I think this building has a very aesthetic setting. So even when you look at the little corners present in between the floors where there is a table you can sit around, that is kind of like my favorite part, because it is the perfect sense, because you have a view as well as like a perfect setting to just sit and attend a class or maybe have a conversation.
The verticals are taken away from the staircase, so they drain. If the water hits them, it doesn't penetrate the stair. And here what we've done is a very kind of simple groove which holds and stops the water from actually going to the staircase area, and it's drained out in the corner. As you go to the third floor, again, there's a rationality to it, and again a flexibility. So you see a big terrace here with plants. Some spaces subdivided into two, some consolidated as labs. This lab could easily go there, or this terrace can become a classroom, or this classroom can become a lab, etc. So that flexibility occurs because the armature is so clear. So these terraces, which are adjacent to, big classrooms, and you see these wooden doors, they open completely so the classroom can spill out here. And students can actually come and sit here, have a coffee. There's a niche here where there'll be a coffee machine. And then, of course, the green here creates a beautiful veil, and it'll get denser with time. It attracts birds, so you can hear birds chirping. It sort of brings nature into the building. The floor yet stays the quota consistently, except it's not so highly polished here so that people don't slip if it does get wet. And then the rest is the red granite, which is flame finished, which is picked up from the amphitheater on the ground floor as a way of signaling through the building that these social spaces where people congregate is one material.
One of the best things about the building is the ventilation. It's quite interesting how it's been constructed in such a way that we always have like this nice breeze that's flowing through, and especially during this weather, this is probably the most relaxing place to sit right after your class. So I quite enjoy it. I think post-class, you come and sit here, you relax with some of your friends, people from the other class, adjacent classes will come out. You might again meet new people, which I love doing, and then you move on to the next class in the next building.
By the time you come to the fourth floor, it's less dense. You have many cutouts, you have staircases that connect the third and the fourth floor. It's also that porosity that you feel on the ground floor, you also feel that porosity in the vertical dimension. Here there are many cutouts which connect you below to the third level, but also the skylights bring in light of different colors. And what we've introduced is a strip of glass blocks here, which actually wash the wall below. So therefore you kind of begin to get a sectional connection between the third and the fourth floor, and the top floor doesn't feel completely cut out. And then this overlooks a garden and a terrace below too, and therefore creates an integration with the rest of the building.
See, it's a very airy building. So whenever you just walk in the corridors of this building, you will never feel that it's kind of stuffy, it's kind of having a very dark space. It's all airy. A lot of positive energy in this building.
The last sort of important aspect is that the east and the west facade are completely in louvers, and so therefore in terms of the orientation we really buffered the east and west so that the sun gain would be minimized, and the faculty have control on the louvers for each of their cabins.
So when they're closed, they look something different. When they're open, they give you access, like a visual access to the world outside and the trees.
Our offices itself are nicely designed. See, when we get into our offices, we have such a wall. So, it opens up. And of course, the wall itself is very amazing. One wall is just this, where you can open the entire wall into this open sky. So that's another great thing.
We had an event that happened in the university, and after the event, we were all hanging out, and eventually it got really late. So this is like 11 p.m., 12 a.m. in the night. So what we ended up doing was we actually stayed overnight, and we had permission, of course, at the university in SES. So we actually slept in the Big Fan area overnight, and we stayed there till the morning. And then after, I think, 7 to 8 a.m., then we went back. The place gives us an opportunity to express ourselves. Even though this is a physical building, there's a lot of emotional and intangible parts of it that I connect to personally.
When people occupy space and they create associative values with that space, space begins to transform. We betted on that risk that people would creatively use these spaces.
Often there's no one-on-one correlation. Oh, this space gives me opportunity to think. No, it's the holistic approach to the building and how I associate my moments in the building that gives me a handle into my being.
This sort of orchestration of circulation, that in architecture is the biggest challenge. In film, the director has you captive and he decides what you see. In architecture, the user decides what they see. The architect can best create as many wonderful frames that they would take the user through.